So what's up, Flip Factor family? This is Michael Green with the Flip Factor Podcast, the #1 podcast dedicated to teaching you how to find and win high-profit flips that make you more money so you have the freedom to do whatever the F you want. Today, we have Louis Di Bianco joining us on our podcast. Now, Louis is a storyteller, and he's a nominated stage and screen actor for more than 40 years of professional experience in acting. He's also had numerous roles and awards to his credit, so really very happy to have you, Louis. Also, for anything, I do want to have one little quick plug for you because I don't want to forget to do this. Louis has, for any inspiring actors or people who are already acting who want to kind of get their game to the next level, he has a really cool course called Camera Audition Mastery. It's offered on Udemy. You want to go check that out. So for anyone who's trying to get their game up, I know Delante, my co-host, I think I was telling you about that, Louis. He's just breaking into the acting stuff. So you might have a customer when he hears this, and he's working on it. So
I can make an offer at the end too to your listeners. And by the way, just a small correction. It's Di Bianco.
Di Bianco.
There's no L in there. There's no Di Bianco. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I feel like I said it the American feel of it versus you had the very Italian feel of it. Like you're very authentic. Di Bianco.
You got it.
Did I? All right. That's awesome. So I'll never get that wrong again. Louis, I mean, I know you were excited to come on and talk about how stories can enrich your life and your business, just all the power that they have. Tell us a little bit about yourself for the listeners.
What specifically would you like to know about me? I mean,
well, everything. I mean, your podcast to me is very interesting. So change your story, change your life. I hope I got that right. But
okay. You know what? I think it'd be valuable for people to hear how I became a professional storyteller. And by being an actor, that is the ultimate form of storytelling. It began out of fear. I grew up in the Bronx, and I looked always like a tough kid. I looked like one of the guys who might be in a gang, but I wasn't. Underneath, I was a guy who loved books, who loved poetry, who loved the arts, anything but a street guy. But I was attracted to the streets, and I was terrified of the guys who really lived that life. The same time that I was terrified of them, I found them, especially as a teenager, really cool. And part of me wanted to be like them. So there was this conflict, but I wasn't a fighter. I had to always pass through neighborhoods where I had to deal with these guys, talk to them, have conversations, avoid them sometimes. And one day, one of them just put it in his mind that we were going to fight. Why? I don't know. So he approached me with the intent to fight. I began to talk, entertain him, charm him, and I made him laugh. By the end of the conversation, he wasn't thinking about fighting anymore. And then I realized at that moment, that's my weapon. This and this, my mouth. And I began to cultivate that as a survival tool. Eventually, I fell in love with the whole process of how do you talk to people in a way that compels them to listen. So they're not doing it out of politeness. They're doing it because they're genuinely involved. And I began to pursue the study of that, which led to my career as a professional actor. Now, here's an interesting note. I've made a good living, I still do, playing gangsters, tough guys, and I do it well. And I identify very strongly with those characters. In fact, some of the women in my life are concerned about that. They go, "You seem to have a romance with the mobster." I say, I do, but I understand why. Because when I'm playing one of those guys, it's my payback for the fear that people struck in my heart on the streets. Because now, as one of those guys, I strike fear in people's hearts, but I don't have to hurt anybody to do it. So that's how I became a successful actor and storyteller.
It's really interesting. You think about it, you actually have all the good parts of being a mobster without all the bad parts, like being shot or going to jail or the FBI tapping your phone, like all the other stuff. So you get the fun, the fun of like, there is some fun, alluring things of being a gangster. That's why some people are. And I love that story.
True. You might like this story. You know Paul Sorvino, right? He's in Goodfellas. I worked with him a couple of times, and he told me an interesting story one night. He said, because, he's made, he was in Goodfellas, right? And a lot of gangsters approach him, and they feel an identity with him. They want to be his friend. And he said to me, I can't stand those people. That's not me at all. But they think that he is,
Yeah, he's got it's kind of his persona, right? Yeah, so they think he's like in the life and appreciates it, but in reality, he's just playing a role and being a great actor.
Paul is a singer, he's a teacher, he's a sculptor, and he draws. He does everything.
Very creative. He's a lover, not a fighter, right?
Yep.
So I bet some people are listening right now and they're wondering, what does this have to do with house flipping? I want to take a second to hold you on there because I wouldn't have made the connection either until I met Louis and realized that like a lot of what his podcast talks about is so deeply connected to the things that hold us back as house flippers, right? We just have so many limiting beliefs, so many stories we tell ourselves that don't allow us to get any of the results. So one of the things I noticed when I was listening and we did our podcast and I just was taking some notes and thought about it later on was that you talk about how when you tell yourself a story, it determines the quality of your life and the quality of your business. What are some of the common stories you've heard from people that are really holding them back?
Oh, this is big. Everybody listening, take note of this. Whether you realize it or not, you're a storyteller. That's what we are. Human beings are storytelling machines. You have two options. Let the stories just pop into your head and dominate you. Picture a puppet. You're the puppet, and the story, the narrative that you've unleashed is pulling the strings and directing you here, there, and everywhere. It's not a good feeling. Or you take control of the narrative and direct it where you want it to go. Because we have such an intense, our DNA is wired for self-protection and survival, we tend to go to the fear-based and negative stories immediately. When we're presented with something that involves change or jumping into something where we've never done before, the protective mechanism is going to look for all the reasons why it can't or shouldn't work. And as Dan Sullivan says, the ear only hears and the eye only sees what the mind is looking for. So if you're afraid, and certainly flipping a house is an adventure, it's exciting, it's a responsibility, and it's a risk. It's not like going to work as an employee and knowing that if you come in hungover on Monday, but you just make it to 5 o'clock, you're going to get paid. Even if you phone it in, you can't phone in entrepreneurial ventures and get paid. So there's no guarantee. The responsibility is on you. That's scary. So your narrative is probably often going to be, wow, this is a big investment. What if I put in all of this money and I don't sell the house and I lose my shirt? And you begin to envision that. I learned in a course called Enlightened Warrior Training, fear only happens when you allow yourself to live in the future. And that means living in a possibility that's scary and negative. We create that stuff. 99% of the time, what really happens, something you can handle, it's even good, but we anticipate all sorts of horror stories. Now, when you're facing adventure like flipping a house, that's not what the average person does. You weren't brought up and your parents told you, okay, we're going to teach you how to flip houses. Or when you went to school, they had a course in house flipping. No, you were trained to be an employee, to follow the system, play it safe, get enough money to keep a roof over your head, dream about the things you think you'll never have, and then die.
That's powerful feedback. It's exactly what we deal with. And
I know.
if you really consider the fact that it's also, well, you get a lot of praise for doing stuff like being a doctor or going to college and doing something, getting an MBA. You get a lot of natural praise for that. But then when you do something like house flipping, you might make more than a doctor and you might have even huger, more upside than a doctor would have and freedom to do all these awesome things. But if I tell my friends I'm a house flipper, they're like, oh, really? Ooh, that sounds dangerous. It's almost a little bit of judgment where it's like Now, these days it's hotter than ever. So a lot of people are into it. But at the same time, you're going to get a lot of people who just don't get it because there's so much, like you said, it's not a check every week. You have to go out and earn it. And when you were talking early about the fact that like it's the stories we tell ourselves in the future. I love that statement because you're right. Even I'm a very analytical guy, and what's took me 6 years to flip my first house. And the reason I believe it took me so long is because I was so in the future of like, well, what if I do this wrong? I do that wrong. What would that mean? And can I even do this? There's just all these questions. And I realized I read a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, probably one of the most famous real estate investing books. And it's just a very general book. It doesn't teach you a lot of things, but it has one thing in there that was really powerful is that they said, never make a statement. Don't say, well, house flipping's too hard. Ask yourself the question, what would it take for me to be able to do it, not make it hard? And that shift is huge, right?
Now, what you just said is really interesting because do you know who the rich dad was, the main rich dad?
I thought it was a fictitious story. I mean, I found this out a couple months ago and he said it wasn't actually a real story. It was more of a made up just for interest.
Well, what was made up was the character that Kiyosaki presents in the book
Okay.
and says, we're just one guy, a friend of my father's. Actually, there were two people who influenced him. One was a guy in Hawaii, but the main guy, the rich dad, is Keith Cunningham. And he has a new book that is the definitive book on business and mindset. What you just said about questions, that comes from Keith. I just heard the podcast the other day where he was talking. That's what he was saying, asking the right questions. So the book he has right now is The Road Less Stupid.
I'm writing that down. I gotta check that out.
I have it. It's a fabulous book.
All right.
It has humor and insight. It'll change your life. But to people who have an issue with being stopped by the fear-based stories, here's what I'm going to recommend. Most of you won't do it. Do a fire walk.
Oh,
you ever done?
I have. Yeah. I'm in the club. Tony Robbins had to run across some fire.
I did Tony Robbins' fire walk, but I did it a couple of years after I had done a bigger one. Mm-hmm. I liked Tony's, but I found it, because I had done one, I found it too short. Mm. What you discover, the only way you're going to do the fire walk successfully is by not living in the future, by not allowing the narrative to tell you, what if I suddenly get seriously burned? What if, I'm permanently injured? What if I can't walk? You let yourself live in those stories, it's going to happen. But if you go one step at a time, you don't look down at the coals, you look at the partner who's on the other side, waiting to embrace you, and you just walk confidently and slowly. Wow, you just walked on hot, burning coals. Mm-hmm. That'll snap you out of negative stories real quick.
Yeah, I was literally just talking to my girlfriend about this, like maybe just 2 weeks ago, and she asked about it. It's a firewalk, and what I explained to her, I was like, it's just like how I sit down with people when I'm teaching them how to flip houses, right? Tony spent hours teaching us how to do it, gave us the steps, told us what not to do, because you can't stop in the middle of the thing or you're going to burn your feet off. But he told us everything. He's like, there's a science to it. This is not something we invented. And then the fact you had all these people doing it in front of you, you got to see them do it. You knew the steps to take. Like, you were very well informed on how to do a proper firewalk, and no one was getting hurt. And I realized that flipping a house or any venture you take in life is much like that. It's breaking it down into the steps. And when you ask the question of like, how do I flip a house or how do I do it safely? You start finding the answers and you start figuring it out, right? People start showing you. You start attracting the people who want to teach you that. And I believe this is true for anything, by the way. And I think that's why Tony Robbins teaches it and many others, is like, it's just a really true thing. You can learn how to do anything. And do you think that firewalk's whole purpose is to show people that even something as crazy as walking, I think it's like 2,200 degree coals or something, and not burning your feet off, like no one would think that even makes sense. But it's knowing how to do it. You can even do something that crazy when you know how to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Another story that I'm sure comes up for people who resist the house flipping, even though they're attracted to it, is their money story. I believe that in our society, we're more confused about money than we are about sex. And we're pretty screwed up about sex. Most people are really not clear about it. But if you think I'm kidding, notice that most people today will more casually discuss sex and their own sex lives than they will money. It's totally emotional. So if you have a certain safety mindset around money, wow, I mean, the money freedom you have to have with money to be able to use it wisely and play with it as a house flipper is going to demand a leap into a new way of viewing it. Not something reckless, but definitely not the way you were taught to think about money. And you mentioned the judgment. Yeah, I mean, there are people who are going to say to you, house flipping, that's sleazy. And you go, why? Well, I mean, you're not, homes are very emotional things too. People feel that for some, well, you should invest in a home because you're going to bring your family there and then you're going to enrich the community. But if you're a house flipper, you must be some kind of predator. So what I would say is if they talk to you like that, smile, say thank you for sharing, and run.
Yeah, I agree. Well, they're doing the opposite of what we're talking about right now, right? They're literally going to the handful of negative views you could take of house flipping and focusing on that when there's like 500 positive views you could take on it.
I
You know,
know.
you're fixing up the neighborhood, you're putting beautiful people in beautiful homes. And like, no one's ever bought a house from me or sold a house to me that wasn't really happy to be working with me. And I go above and beyond to make that happen. And most house flippers do also. I mean, they're not all good, but in any industry, not everyone's good, but mostly good, which is really an important thing to know. Like, mostly good and doing a lot of good for themselves, their families. And think of all the people in my business. I have 40 people that are employed and they're feeding their families. They're happy to work for me. I treat them with a lot of respect. And, you know, I get that opportunity to do that. And it's a really positive thing. And I get to help others in a big way. And then we do the podcast I share. And so I think you're right. I mean, it tells you a lot about the person when it's a really big stretch to say that it's anything negative about house flipping. Now, when you said, I loved one of the pieces you just said, like, it's not something you just jump into. And that's a really big thing I always preach too, is that if you're going to become a house flipper like anything else, you've definitely got to do the research and you got to be ready. I don't think you need the 6 years I did. That might have been a little too much. That was definitely some paralyzation. You know, I just couldn't move and I was just in my head too much. But that's it, right? Just figure it out, get the plan together and do it. Just like Tony Robbins, go walk across fire. You can definitely, seems like flipping a house would be easier than walking across 2,200 degree coals, in my opinion.
I don't think so.
Really?
Many people.
But he
No.
taught us that. And I mean, he taught us that in a couple hours, but you're right. Yeah. So the coals.
Well, you see, the thing about the walking across the coals, once you accept and trust and you do it, it's over like that. But the house flipping is a process that you're going to be committed to for a while as you're doing the work, getting the house ready, the renovations. Now, I just thought, here's an empowering story. If you want to be attracted to house flipping, if you see yourself as a pioneer, everyone needs a place to live. Everyone would love to have a beautiful place to live. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but in house flipping, you often find houses that are run down, and then you have the vision to see not what it is, but what it can be. And then with your effort, your investment, your time, and your money, you transform it from something that is ugly into something that's beautiful and appealing. And now you make it available to someone. And if they buy it, you've enriched their lives and they didn't have to go through the work. So is that bad or good?
Not bad by any means, and that's completely how I see it. So you nailed it for not being a house flipper. You nailed it exactly like what I'm thinking and feeling. And I've seen it many times over, just how happy people are to move into one of our beautiful homes. And it's just a big deal. I mean, that's the reason I was saying we never get anything but hugs. And when the houses are sold on the front side at a discount, well, they're very happy to see us too, because they're often in such bad shape that they couldn't list it with a realtor, or they'd have to put a lot of time and effort in renovating it, which they don't want to do. And so they're okay. If they do give it to us at a little bit of a discount, but we offer them convenience of not having to go in there and clean all the trash out and fix the place, right? Most people don't even have the money, time, or even the ability to even want to do that. They're just like, I'd rather be doing better things like being with my family. So we see that all the time. It's a very true story. What do you think one of the biggest transformations you've seen when someone's changed their story? Do you have any case studies or just people that you've seen in life, maybe some people you're hanging around or anyone?
Well, yeah. Here's a guy I interviewed twice on my podcast. I don't know if you and I discussed it. His name is Lou Ferrante. Look him up. He's written some books. Lou Ferrante he went into the life of crime as a teenager. He was totally attracted to it, like Henry Hill was in Goodfellas. He lived in New York and Queens, and he became a hijacker at the age of 18. And John Gotti noticed his talent, and he became a hijacker for John Gotti. He was also a violent offender. He would hijack at gunpoint, and he was short, but he was tough, and he had a temper. And by the age of 25, he was in maximum security prison, and he was facing a long, long sentence. While he was in prison, an incident happened in jail, and some guy had done something, and Lou had seen it. And the cops came, and they said, "So who did it?" Nobody spoke up. They looked at Lou, and they said, "You did it." "I didn't." "Who did it?" "I'm not saying." "If you don't tell us, we're going to put you in the hole." "Put me in the hole." They put him in solitary confinement. He says, one day the warden came by. Lou was in such a rage that when the guy got close, he ran toward the bars and he grabbed the guy's ties. He said, my intention was I was going to put my feet against the door and pull the tie and strangle him. The tie came off. It was a clip-on. He gets pissed off. He says, "You're wearing a clip-on." The guy said, "Of course." with animals like you think we're going to take the chance? You're an animal. You're going to die here in this cage. When the warden left, he said it hit him. I am. I'm a violent person. I hurt people. He decided to change. He takes an interest in books. This guy began to read voraciously. Like he said, sometimes 14 and 15 hours a day. He wouldn't go to mess hall and he wouldn't go out into the rec yard. He would read. Where did he get the books? You want to hear a funny story?
Yeah.
I can use any kind of language on the show.
Oh, well, yeah, go for it. We'll just put it in there.
No, it's not bad. I mean, so he said that when he was on the outside and they were in Gotti's social club, they used to play cards a lot. And he used to play in the summer with this guy named Fatso, literally 300 to 400 pounds. In the summer, he would play without a shirt. And he had inscriptions all over his body, like from the Bible. And he used to read stuff on the guy's body. So he sends him a letter and he says, Fatso, I need stuff to read in jail. And the guy goes, sure. He says, what do you want? You want tits? You want ass? No. I want legitimate stuff to read. And the guy goes, the fuck do I know about that? He says, don't worry about it. He says, go to the bookstore. You tell the broad about me. And what she gives you will probably be good. He gets 3 books, Life of Julius Caesar, Mein Kampf, and something about Napoleon. And he says to Fatso, I want to thank you, but why these books? So I did what you said. I went to the broad, I told her about you, and she gave me these books. What did you tell her? That you're short and bossy. So Lou became an expert in 19th century literature and became an expert, especially in the work of Marcel Proust. I have an MA in literature. He knows more about Proust than I do. So when he gets out of jail, the guy gives up the life, becomes an author, motivational speaker, and I think he still has a show. You can look it up on Discovery, Inside the Gangster's Code. It's a documentary show. He's the host. And the funniest thing was, here's this wise guy who used to go at gunpoint and rob people. I said to him, can we do the podcast on Saturday? He said, no. He said, I converted to Judaism. He says, that's my Sabbath. Am I hearing this right? That's a change of story.
Yeah. He was Italian, right?
Oh, yeah. Lou Ferrante. Yeah.
That's such an interesting concept.
It doesn't get more dramatic than that.
It really doesn't. And, I think when I'm listening to the story, the one thing I hear is that really anyone in any position or any demographic, any situation in life can change their story and become the person they feel like they were actually meant to be.
Yeah.
So maybe he wasn't meant to be an enforcer or a hijacker for the mafia.
No, the funniest thing is how we met. I started by reading one of his books, and it's called Mob Rules. And what he had done is he did it for the business world, because he's a motivational speaker to business people. And he looked at how many mobsters behave, and besides the crime, there are real lessons in there about business, about living, that are valuable. I found the book fascinating. So I said, I'd love to contact this guy. So I look him up, and he has a website. And on the website, it has a contact form. So I'm thinking, how am I going to reach out to him and not come off like some suck? He's a wise guy. He's a street guy. I sent him this email. It said, Lou, I'm a guy you don't know, period. Yet, period. I have a podcast, Change Your Story, Change Your Life. I want to interview you. About 4 days later, he contacted me, and that was it.
That's
and
awesome.
We did 2 shows.
Yeah, he's a very interesting guy. I just wrote his name down. That's really cool stuff. As house flippers, we talk about change your story, change your life. As house flippers, we have a handful of stories that I feel like hold almost every house flipper back. It's pretty rare to have anyone walk in. Like you said, we're not prepared to walk in to invest a bunch of money and not know every little step ahead of time, or not to have almost a guarantee way of winning. But some of the things I've seen is people, first of all, can I be a house flipper? Is it just for people who have money or no construction? That would actually be a big one too. Do you have to be an expert at construction? Do you need $150,000, $200,000 to invest a house? Would I have time to do it is a big one. It's like, would I have time? I have a full-time job. The answer to all those is that, almost everyone I've ever seen as a house flipper had to start doing it part-time. Generally is not an expert at construction, had to learn on the fly. And most of the time, money-wise, we get other people to put the money up, because when we have a really strong plan and we have a great opportunity, people are more than willing to invest with you to get you off your, get you on your feet and get you off and going. What would you say are a couple steps that people are being challenged with as house flippers that, I'm not good on the phone with people. I don't like talking to strangers. I don't think I could do sales. Anything like that? What would be like a maybe a 1 to 3 step process you would go through to try to clear some of these negative thoughts out of the way and get into like more positive, how do I get there?
It's a good question. First of all, I would write this down. How you do anything is how you do everything.
Oh, that's big.
So if this is coming up for you, these fears are coming up for you when you're thinking about flipping a house, you want to take a sheet of paper and say, what other areas of my life does this kind of fear come up when I'm going to approach something? And it's probably going to be something totally unrelated to house flipping. So you begin to understand how your mind thinks and what stops you, number one. The other thing, which is big in all of the things that you mentioned, I'm not good at this, I don't know enough about construction. There's an underlying narrative that controls all of those stories. And it's this: I won't do something until I'm ready. And being ready for you means having all the pieces of the puzzle in place. You know what that really means? You'll probably never do it because no one has all of the pieces of the puzzle in place. You're going to have to realize that it's the reverse. If you're willing to take the first step in the dark and not know where the knowledge is going to come from, trust if Mike tells you there are resources that you can turn to, find people who love doing construction and are good at it and can assist you, and people who can assist you to get money. Trust that process, take the first step, and you'll be amazed at how suddenly you'll discover the second step and discover the third step. But if you want to be able to see the entire road ahead of you before you walk on it, you're never going to walk on it.
We don't get paid very well for things that are completely already easy. Like working at McDonald's, what they're known for is their systems. You know, you cook fries, they hit a button, they 2 shakes of salt, it's all over and it's good. Yeah. And they make it so simple, which allows them to hire people 10 or 12 bucks an hour. And they have an abundance of people who can do that job because there's not much to learning it, right? Everyone, like, I can figure that out. They made it really easy. House flipping, we get paid an enormous amount of money to figure out and get past some of those things. So you're right. It's all about just, first of all, having a great way of starting, at least knowing the first couple steps. But then along the way, there's going to be a lot of bumps in the road, a lot of challenges, and we're going to have to figure our way out of those. And I love the way you just said that, because if you don't know, the way you do one thing is how you do everything. So if you're not in your life pushing through walls and getting past boundaries and struggles, then you're not going to ever do that as a house flipper either.
No. Here's a declaration that I use. I got from another course I took. This was Enlightened Wizard. That when I'm afraid and playing it safe, I repeat this mantra to myself. I'm comfortable with chaos, ambiguity, and the unknown. Try that at night and in the morning. Say it to yourself, but say it so you get to mean it and believe it. One of the most vivid examples for me was when I decided to move from New York City, where I was born and raised, to go to Montreal and do a master's degree in English literature. I started by visiting Montreal and exploring the city for a week. And I met people, and someone I met introduced me to someone who was moving, who happened to have an apartment that was going to be available in September when I was supposed to start school. So it was handed to me. Thing was, I knew New York, and I had a job in New York and an income. Moved to Montreal. I don't know Montreal, and there's no income, none. I'm going to be going to school. I remember the night before I left Montreal, I hadn't made my decision, and I couldn't sleep. I was up the entire night in my friend's apartment, and at dawn, I walked out onto the back balcony, and I was looking at the mountain in Montreal, and the sun was coming up, and I was torn. I was paralyzed. And one moment, I said, whoa, what's holding me back? I want a guarantee. I want a crystal ball that's going to show me exactly what's going to happen if I move here, and I want to feel safe. And a voice said, that's not going to happen. Close your eyes and free fall into the unknown. Trust it. Are you drawn to this? Yeah. Is it exciting? Yeah. You really want to do it, don't you? Yes. Then just do it. And the moment I felt that, I was released. I knew I had made the decision. I'm coming here. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know where the money's going to come from. Well, if I hadn't made that move, I probably wouldn't have discovered my creative talent. I wouldn't have become a respected stage and film and television actor. I wouldn't have made the money that I'm making and that I have made, all because of jumping into the unknown. Are you willing to jump into the unknown? That's where you're going to change your story.
No, I love that finish part too. Are you willing to jump into the unknown? Because anything worth having is going to require a little bit of jumping into the unknown and changing your story. Louis, this has been excellent stuff. Thank you so much for spending time with us. And I look forward to having you back in the future and, just really talking about this subject even more. One thing I've noticed about you, obviously, is you've educate yourself. And I really believe in education. And I hope that a lot of people who've spent the time to listen to us today got some education from Louis. He spent a lot of years learning all this stuff and he's showing it to you now. So thank you for that. And from the depth of my heart.
Now,
Yeah,
can I give a plug for my course, which will be a special offer for your students?
Absolutely. I was just going to ask you, how can they get a hold of you? And if there's anything you'd like to share.
The course that I've created for actors is on-camera audition mastery. You have to understand that you can look me up in the IMDb, okay? Go there and look up Louis Di Bianco. I don't have to tell you what my credits are. You'll see that I've done a lot of really great work with a lot of great people, including an Academy Award-winning film, Moonstruck, with Norman Jewison as director. But I've also been a teacher for as long as I've been an actor, and I've been teaching actors. And when I teach actors, they learn and their work improves. When I created this course, I created everything about auditioning. When I looked at it, I said, wow, this is really 6 courses in one. How much would it cost if I gave individual workshops in these topics? And honestly, it was about $1,500. But I priced the online course at $199 American dollars. Because it's a new course online, here's what I'll do for you guys, and it's a win-win. I want students who get in the course and who love it and will review it and rate it. That'll give me even more of an appeal to other people who don't know me. And if you're willing to be an early adopter and take, by the way, there's a guarantee of 30 days. No matter what you pay for it, your money, you get it back if you don't like the course, but you'll love it. I'm going to give you the course. If you tell me that you heard about me through this, $19.95, $20. That's it. Oh. 4.5 hours, 27 videos. You get to keep them for life. It's everything you would need to be a person who auditions well. Now, if you're not an actor and you're not auditioning, of course, you probably learned something, but it's probably not for you. It's specific.
Yeah, it's for actors. But I had a question, though, because, we have mostly house flippers listening to this and some people who want to get deeper into their acting career. Isn't like talking to sellers, isn't that really just like a script that you have to learn and rehearse and practice to really get someone to close and, building rapport with people? So they could probably gain a lot from that, right?
Well, yeah, no, look, I coach business people using dramatic communication skills. I coach them on presentations, and I can do that for people one-on-one, but the course itself, you'll learn a lot, but it's really geared at the specific experience. Like, for instance, when you audition for something, you're maybe called by an agent the day before. They say, tomorrow at 3:00, you have an audition at this address, and they send you what they call sides. 2 or 3 pages, 4 pages, not the whole script. You've got to learn that script, and then you've got to go in and you've got to deliver it in front of a camera, in a room, and with a reader who's probably just giving you the lines without any feeling. So it's a very specific kind of experience. And I'm dealing with that. So will they get value from it if they're not actors? Yes, but I don't want to lie to people. If you're auditioning, this is how to take your auditions to the next level and start booking jobs. But if the people want to learn how to feel confident talking to people, tell compelling marketing messages, I'll work with them on their presentations. That I can do. That's different. You can reach me I'll give you my personal email. It's easy, lousclub, LOUSCLUB, @gmail.com. That's it.
It's easy. So reach out to them if you want some help being a more dynamic storyteller, closing people. And if you've ever thought about doing anything with acting, $20 is a steal. So I would recommend getting it, even if you think you can just get like even one nugget out of it. I have a complete system. I mean, belief, not really a system. I've spent a lot of money on coaching over the years. And if I just get a couple things out of anything I spend money on, I generally can monetize that as long as I follow through and do that. So I'm never looking for any one training to be like everything you need to know about X. It's always like, okay, you need to know some of these things. Some of these are not for you, but there's some things that are going to change your life in there. So Lou's got some good stuff. Lou, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, man.
No, you're welcome. And I want to say a big thanks to the Flip Factor family for joining us. I know how valuable your time is. My name is Michael Green. My work is done, and yours has just begun. Get out there and win some high profit flips, everyone. Have a great day. See you.